Hello everyone, welcome back. It's hot here, so I'm bringing red and I have the fan going, so I'm sorry about that if you hear that. But I realized recently that in all of this time that I've been doing a podcast, I was taking you guys on the journey of my awakening. But in that awakening, I didn't always share the tools that got me to the next level. And I think I tried to along the way, but some of them, I think what was happening is I had a plan to share all the tools that I had learned along the way. And then Spirit started moving through me and they decided what was next to come in the list of topics. But now that I'm putting together lessons for the group, the Energy Tribe, I realized that this is how I realized it. I was like, okay, every group set meeting, we're going to open up with a sacred prayer and open sacred space. I'll do it this time and someone else can do it next time. And I realized like nobody knew how to do it, or like nobody had their own prayer to open up space, which made me realize, okay, we got to go back many steps, which is totally fine. And at that same time was the message of that podcast that I did called The Voices in the Stone. And I know that it was kind of going back to basics on how do we understand everything, like how do we use our senses to understand the things that don't talk and that don't use our verbal language. And that's where that episode was coming from. It was tuning back into all of your senses to understand the stones. And I think so that episode came out, and then I realized, like, as I was putting together the first lesson for the group, that I talked to you guys about the touching, tasting, smelling, all of the senses to listen to a stone, but we never got into the clairs. And so today I'm going to be talking about the clairs. And I mean, it's a weird topic, and it's one that I think I have thought that anyone that's interested in spirituality already understands. But then I look at my journey, and I know I didn't know what they were when they were introduced to me. So then I thought, well, why am I assuming that anyone knows about the clairs? So I'm just, if this is like below where you are in your journey, bear with me. If it's not, then I know I'm here to share it. So I'm going to share my take on it. So the clairs were introduced to me by my shamanic teacher, and I remember when she introduced them, she said, okay, here's the list, and just go down it, and I want you to like pull out the ones that rank them. Like if you have any of them, just point, like star it or whatever. And I remember my first reaction was, well, I don't even know. No. So if you're coming to this episode feeling like, that's not me. I mean, one day I hope to have a clair. The chances are you already have a few of them and you've had them your whole life. You just didn't learn how to develop them. And that's kind of what I learned, is that all of the things that I thought in my life were the hindrances and the things that made me too sensitive were the things that actually are the clairs. The problem is that our society, we don't value them. Let's just put it that way. We don't value them, so therefore we don't develop them like a language or reading, because it's not something that we're conditioned to believe matters. But in this spiritual realm, it's everything. They are everything, because it's how you communicate and how you understand spirits. So I'm going to go through the main ones with you guys and give you little stories along the way. But just know that this is coming to you because there's a reason that you need to start tuning into what your dominant clairs are. And when I say that, we'll go through each one and you'll understand what I mean by dominant. We typically have one that is the strongest. It's the way that we receive messages the most clearest or the most often. And then once in a while, you'll get sprinkled in here and there some other clairs. But there's usually one that is like your main like lifeboat, raft, whatever, that it always seems to be how they communicate. And why? Because your frequency is attuned usually to that channel, and they know it. So that's how they give you the information that you need on your journey in that way. Now, they will, as I'm going to also explain, start testing out your other senses to see, are you ready to bring the other senses online? Because even if you do have one clair that is dominant, as you go down this journey, you start developing all of them. And I know that sounds like, holy crap, how is that possible? But it's through time, it's through being patient, and it's through being open. And if you guys have been with this podcast for a long time, you'll know that the first clair, which is clairvoyance, is one that I've always wanted. It's intuitive, clear vision and clear seeing. And this is when visions, past, present, and future, flash through your mind's eye or your third eye or your pineal gland, much like a daydream. Many highly visual and able to understand the ideas best when they are written or sketched out as an image on a computer or a screen or a canvas. So most people are clairvoyant. If they're exploring the clairs, usually they will say that clairvoyance is their number one, because it comes in like a flash. Like it's almost like an imagination, but it feels more out of nowhere. It's not, your mind's not creating the image as in a daydream or like something that you're thinking about and then you get images along with what you're thinking about. It's not, I don't believe like that. It's more of like a flash of an image that you were not thinking about at all. That is clairvoyance. And yes, I have had, and the more I stopped putting like this, I'm not clairvoyant out there, and I started embracing like, I think I'm going to open up all my senses and see what is ready to come through, I noticed that, yes, I do get images now more than I used to. But for me, it usually is a confirmation of another way that they've been speaking to me. So it's usually like I'll get the download, as I call them, and then it will be followed up with an image or a clarification with an image. And to me, the next clair, which is Claircognizant, which is intuitive knowledge, clear knowing. And this is when we have knowledge of people or events that would not normally have knowledge about. Spirit impresses us with the truths that simply pop or download into our minds from out of nowhere. That is my number one clair. And so typically with me, Spirit gives me these downloads, or I'm using Claircognizance to understand whatever it is that they're sharing. And it feels like a whole file from a computer just dropping into me at once. And then what will happen is that an image might pop in at the end to confirm it, but still always for me is usually always claircognizant or clear knowing. And like when I think back around my life, I think I always had it, but of course, you know, nobody ever thinks like, or they might say, you know it all, or, you know, they might not value it. And so I only in this journey of awakening did I start paying more attention to it. And by paying more attention to it, Spirit realized I was listening now, not just like thinking that I had an active imagination or was getting these things from nowhere. And then I started paying attention to when they came and speaking them, like in this case, speaking them out loud on this podcast and sharing them. And for me, once I started hearing and sharing, they started coming in more frequently, and I trust them now. So if, like today, this particular episode I'm recording because something happened this morning that made me realize like, oh, I need to share this, and I confirmed it, and yes, this is what needed to come through. but it's through the trusting over the last, I would say consistently the last like year and a half, that I am comfortable understanding that part of me. And therefore, yes, I claim it as my number one Clair. Now, the next one is Clairaudience, which is intuitive audio or hearing or clear hearing. And this is when we hear words, sounds, or music in our own mind's voice. On a rare occasion, spirit may be able to create an audible sound, though this takes a tremendous amount of focus and energy. So this is why I'm doing this episode today. I think I've talked about this, issues with my ears for the last year pretty consistently. I thought originally it was allergies because they itch a lot. And when I say itch, I mean not like I can scratch it. It's like deep itching. Like there's nothing that can satiate it. And I have gone through, different methods of trying to get to the itch. And when the group actually recommended doing that ear wax coning, and I did it, I think I did 2 on each ear. And that night after I did it, I heard like a humming music. Actually, it was in this ear. It was like a melody of a humming, but obviously in my house, there was no music on. And so I was like, maybe my ears were really blocked up and they needed to, get something else I could hear. Well, this morning, I was deep asleep in a dream, and all of a sudden I was laying on my left side, and all of a sudden in this ear, someone says my name, and it is like clear as day, and it isn't I say my name Gabrielle, and my mom says it Gabriel. Why? Because she named me Gabriel. So, as you guys know, if you've been on this journey with me, that's what she named me. So the voice said Gabriel, and it was feminine. The sound was feminine, but it wasn't someone that I know. It almost sounded, and this is going to sound weird, but again, this is me trying to put other senses into 3-dimensional words. It sounded a little metallic, but it was a little high pitched, like it just was like Gabrielle, like that. And I mean, it was as if someone was right in my ear in the physical. So of course I startled awake because I thought someone was waking me up. And then I had I've heard this called sleep paralysis, where you're awake but you can't move. And I was on my side still, and I woke up because I definitely was like, someone's here. And I realized this is Clairaudience coming in. And I said in my mind, allow the energy to flow, just open up, relax, like let go of the tension. Because, if anyone wakes you up out of a deep sleep, you feel a little startled. So I just breathed into it and I just let it flow. And it felt like my whole body was kind of like this, like tensing up. And then as I just started breathing and relaxing into it, I could start to move, and I moved my body a little bit. And I was like kind of waiting there for a second to see, is there something that they're going to say? Like, why did that just happen? And nothing else came through, just my name. But the feeling in my body was like there was energy moving through it. And I know that it was my first like audible experience with actual spirit speaking, not just a tone, because I do get a lot of tones all the time in both ears, but this was actually verbal, my name. So that is a new Clair for me in a full sense. So like I said, prior to today, I have been hearing tones, and I think that the tones are the raising of your frequency, and that you're hearing it feels like, how do I say it? Like the melodics of energy. And sometimes if your frequency is high, you pick up on the tone of it. So I know, like when I'm feeling like there's a lot of energy coming in, or my ears will all of a sudden feel like they're underwater, and then I'll hear or like a tone. So I've had that for about a year, but never have I had a voice. And this, I was thinking, okay, if this gift fully comes on and someone is talking to me, because it sounded like it's a person. It wasn't like, I mean, it was a higher pitch, a little higher pitch, but it sounded like as clear as me speaking to you. So after I woke up, I was thinking, okay, if this gift actually does come online, it is so real. Like, it's not in my download where the download feels like it's inside of my body, and I just pause and let it come in. And as my mind kind of grasps what's happening, I do notice that I get quiet and I kind of just let it sink in, but I'm alone a lot, so that doesn't really matter. Where this was like literally someone talking to me very clearly. So, yeah, it was an experience, and I'll let you know what happens with it. So the next Clair is Clairsentient, which is intuitive knowing by feeling and clear feeling. And this entails feeling a person or spirit's emotions or feeling another person's physical pain. Now, in the list of Clairs, this for me was the number 2. I always have felt people, and typically in hindsight, this is why I spend a lot of time alone. It's really intense for me to be around big groups of people, and especially people that I guess are on a lower vibration or frequency, because I pick up on that. I'm going to use my brother as an example. I pick up on that frustration and that it feels like unhappiness, but I don't know. So I feel that feeling, but I don't know, is it directed because he's unhappy to be in the space with me? That's possible. Is he frustrated because he doesn't know how to communicate with me? That's possible. So I'm not saying like I'm picking up on him because he's frustrated with his life. I'm picking up on what he's feeling in that moment. And so then it makes me really uncomfortable to be around it, because then I start to feel like that. And what I know through human design is, as a projector, I amplify it. So if he's awkward, I become even more awkward and more quiet. And it just feels uncomfortable. So typically I try not to be around a lot of people. And when I work with people in energy, I open that sense and I say, like, whatever comes in is meant for that person. And then it becomes, I always say to people that get a human design reading with me, these senses can become your superpower if you understand that it's a sense, and it's like another way for you to understand someone. And for me now, I know how to use it. So like when I turn it on and I fully am aware of being in a space and time with one other soul, I know who it's for, so it's easier for me to focus and understand what's happening, versus, let's say, in a crowd, it feels like overwhelm, and then I get exhausted and I feel like I need to retreat. So yeah, that one for me has always been in my life and always has made me more introverted and more secluded, which in the norm situation, is not a great thing, because then you look antisocial and you look like, some people have thought I was conceited or stuck up because I couldn't be around big groups. And that's been what I looked at it as a negative, until now I understand why I'm that way. So the next one is Clairalience, which is intuitive smelling or clear smelling, and this is being able to smell odors that don't have any kind of physical source. So a lot of people that have this one will all of a sudden start smelling, let's say, rose, or like a fragrance that maybe their grandmother wore, and it's like overwhelmingly, but nothing in the air has shifted, nothing can explain where the sound or the smell is coming from. And that is that their spirits are speaking to them through that sense of smell. And in any case, even in this dimension, when you smell something, it transports you to a time and place of memory. And this sense is all about, I feel, feeling into something and remembering because of what it triggers in you. It can be the smell of like tobacco, let's say, or a pipe. If let's say your grandfather was a pipe smoker or anything. For me, I do have, actually I don't have this sense. Let me take that back. But when I go to the cliffs, there's a little bridge that I pass and it's made of cedar. And every time I pass it, it reminds me of the barn at my grandparents' house. So when I pass it, I call them in. They're all past at this point, but I call them all in because the smell reminds me of actually both sets of grandparents, because they both had farms. And I use that smell to invoke their spirits back to me in that moment that I'm going to meditate. So I always welcome them in as I go over that bridge. Okay, the next one is called Clairgustance, and this is intuitive taste or clear tasting. And this is the ability to taste something that actually isn't there. So we kind of worked on this one when we were doing the Voices in the Stones. And why did we actually physically taste the stone? It's because they have messages for you. So if you use that sense of taste, what I taste and what you would taste are different, because it's triggering, I think, again, a memory sense that brings up emotion and feeling about something that, let's say, in one of my stones, I remember, I think it tasted like caramel. That was what it was. And for me, I think of caramel apples, and I have like a really good feeling about that taste, right? So it makes me feel comforted and nurtured. And that's what the spirits are, even the spirit of the stone, are trying to contribute, like speak to you through that sense of what does it conjure up in you. And so it's not necessarily what you physically taste. Like, let's say it's a bitter taste. Well, that bitterness invokes a feeling in you, and that's where how they're trying to communicate. Now, if you have this Clairgustance, it's you all of a sudden, let's say you're not even eating anything or tasting anything, you just get this bitterness or sweetness in your mouth. Again, it's tuning into what's happening and letting it flow as, is there a message in this for me? What does it invoke in me? Do I feel comforted? Do I feel nurtured? Or do I feel scared? Or all of those things. They use it as a tool to talk to you. So then those are the main 6. Now, there are some other ones, and I'm going to talk about one in particular that are, there's 5 more that are on the lower, not of the main group. And the first one is called Clair Essence, which is intuitive embodiment. And this one is now, yes, it's one of my clairs. It's been only in the last, I thought 6 months, because I attune it back to the first time I did ayahuasca, and when I allowed the animal spirits and the other entities to come into my body. But when I think back even further, I realized that when I do energy sessions, I let that energy, that it could be their spirit guides, it could be their higher self, it could be, in one case it was someone's higher self's mother's higher self. I let it come through me, and usually they come into my body and help move the energy for the person. Like an example would be, a few weeks ago I did a healing with someone that Kali, the goddess Kali, came in, and I didn't know much about the goddess Kali. But I knew, so what happened with her is all of a sudden my body started dancing and moving the arms and moving the energy through, and like almost in a way kind of like body dancing and like a snake dancing. And then I got the visual of Kali. So it's like using all of my senses in a session for me to realize who was coming in for her, right? And that goddess, that entity, was as an ally for her, and I wouldn't have been able, my personality would never have brought her in. So in that case, if you allow spirit to move you, whether it be through plant medicines or without plant medicines, because in this case, I was no plant medicines, but I knew in a session, I let them decide what I'm doing, because I know that I'm not doing the session. I know that whoever is here and whoever brought them to me is here to be an ally to help move it through whatever needs to come through for them. So I just, again, I put my personality like on the back burner, and I just let it move. And even though my personality is like watching and being like, holy crap, what's going on here? I know I feel safe. I know I've called in my sacred ceremony, and I know I'm protected. So I feel okay letting it happen. But it's like this energy that moves you in a way that you wouldn't move yourself. And so that's Clair Essence. And then we have Clair Tangency, which is intuitive knowing by touch. So this can feel like, I think I've talked about this, when I am working on someone's chakras and clearing the chakras, for me, it feels like if there is some work that needs to be done in the chakra, I put my hand in it and I move it around to feel it. And if it's dense, or I say sticky, it feels sticky. It feels like you can literally pick it up, almost like the consistency of peanut butter, like but a natural peanut butter where it's kind of oily and kind of separates. It feels like that. So I know that if I feel that stickiness, that there is work to be done in that chakra. So for me, that's what Clair Tangency would be. It's the touching by and understanding by what you feel. So in physical reality, I'm literally my hand above the chakra, just moving my hand. So it's not like I'm touching into, like, physically into their chakra. It's the energy. And so I know that I have that Clair as well, because I can feel it. I can feel energy. And this one, again, it's not, my mind would never have thought that I could feel energy. I'm going to be clear because the mind will say you can't do any of these things. But it was through working and like hearing my teacher say, like, I don't remember her saying that we would feel it, but she just told us, look, you have to practice with people, and I want you to put the chakra into a backspin if it shows that it's affected. And I don't know that everybody feels anything, but for me, it feels like a denseness. So, so then I realized, like, okay, I can feel that. So then, so there goes another Clair. Then the next one is Clair Taction, which is intuitive touch. So this would be, for me, when you are, let's say if you're doing Reiki on someone, or you're doing just energy healing, or even helping someone with a headache, or any kind of where you're helping someone through something, if you move your hands over a spot that feels like it needs energy, it typically could, I feel it two different ways. It will either feel hotter, or in the case of my dog Penny, she has hip dysplasia, and she always is putting her hips in my face. Like, she wants me to hold her and do work on her hips. And for her hips, it feels like mushy. And I know that sounds weird, but it doesn't feel strong. It feels like there's a mush to it. And so I feel like and it makes kind of sense, because I think hip dysplasia is the deterioration of hips. So it feels like the density of the hips are not as strong as the rest of her body. So what I'm saying with this one is just trusting that feeling. What do you feel? Is like, you may feel a heat. That's your key to pick up on it. And of course your mind's going to be like, do I? But this is the thing. The more you try it over and over, let's say practicing on an animal that has an illness, the more you're going to see the consistency of it's the same, no matter if it's today, tomorrow, the next day, or if you're working on people in energy, you'll feel the heat of something that needs to be cleared. Or like I said, it will feel like a tactile or density. And I remember in this, I asked my teacher, like, is this a thing? Does energy have two different feelings? Because one feels like super bright, super light, super like pristine. And the other one feels really dense and sticky. And she said, yeah. And so it wasn't that she taught us that. I had to ask her, is this a thing? Because that was my ego going back to, am I making this up? Because it keeps being consistent over and over, but am I just picking up on it, or is it real? And remember that all of these senses are as real as we make them, right? Like, who is anyone to say it's not real? And more so than anything, it's about trusting what you feel, because that is the thing that I'm realizing the most in all of these clairs, is that each of us are so different, and how I feel something is going to be so different to how you feel something. So the other day in the energy circle, people were talking about a psychic class that was available through another healer, or I think she's a medium. And I had some shadow come up about it because I was feeling like no one can teach you how to be psychic. Like, you have to literally spend the time tuning into your own gifts to remember that you have these gifts. There's no one that's going to teach you. Like, me teaching you is going to be me giving you activities to go into yourself. And possibly that's what this teacher was doing. I don't know. But I realized that it's a process that has taken, like, some people can take their lifetime, some people it can come on really quick, some people have always had it. But what I know now is this: usually the ones that you already have are the ones that you have bothered you, because it's not accepted by society and it's not like celebrated in any way, and so you hate them about you. But those are the things that you need to tune more into, because those are the ways that spirit is working through you. Okay. So then we have Clair Empathy, and Clair Empathy is intuitive feeling of emotion. To me, this one is a lot like Clairsentience. I don't know that there really is a difference. They feel very similar to me. It's basically being able to pick up on the emotion of others. And I don't believe you have to be just a projector in human design to do this. I think that we all have the potential and we can feel into the other. It's just, you have to be able to lose your boundary or your aura, the solidness of your aura, and let it permeate into the other, right? And so if you are interested in this one, it's just like not only hearing someone in the words, but allowing your essence to kind of like mesh with theirs, so that you kind of in a way embody them and you feel what they're feeling. And it's not saying, I'm sorry that you're going through this. Like, for me, typically this is, I will start to cry because I feel like it's happening to me. And it's not to diminish what they're going through, because that's not what an empath is supposed to do. It's that you literally know that there aren't words, because you know that that feeling is all you can do is just be there to hold the space with them, and not to say like, look, I understand what you're going through. Because no, even if you can feel it, you don't understand what they're going through. You just are taking it in so that you can have that, share that space with them, so that they're not alone. And most of the time that is not necessarily speaking anything. It's just being there and holding that space with them. And the last one I have, and this is going to sound weird, is Clairaudience, and this is intuitive communicating. Now, to me, this is being able to communicate telepathically, or something that we're doing, and some of the different groups in the energy tribe is either communicating with each other through meditation, or communicating to each other through our dream state. And it's interesting that this happened to me this morning with the Clairaudience, because last night, my group, we decided to try to meet each other in the dream state. And one person in our group lives in Brazil, so she was going to be getting up way earlier than the other ones that were in the West Coast. And so we each said the same prayer before we went to bed, and we had the intention of meeting in dream state. Now, my dreams last night, I think I was like wanting to watch a movie, but it wasn't at a movie theater. It felt like it was at someone's house, and I don't know who was with me, so I can't say if those women came with me. But I think in a way, me opening up the space with that prayer and with them, maybe that's why the Clair of the audience came in, because I'm opening myself to other energies. So in this one, to practice in the groups that we're doing, like, some people will set a time that they meditate at the same time, and then they try to connect that way. Other people are doing it through dreams as well, which they have seen each other or have had the same types of dreams. This can also be called astral travel, which I don't really know a lot about, so I can't really speak to it. But essentially, it's having the knowing that you can communicate with people outside of words. And yeah, I remember, I'm going to just tell you this one story. My first time taking a gummy, I was having a conversation with Richard's friends were here, and I was telling them a story. I don't even know what, because on the gummy state, I kind of leave my body and I feel like my higher self comes in and it starts talking. But so I kept coming back and be like, what are we talking about? And they were starting to laugh at me because I kept doing that over and over and over. And then what I remember, my higher self speaking to them, and then I stopped talking, but I kept going on in the conversation in my mind, third eye space. And Richard's friend looked at me and he's like, are you going to finish what you're saying? And I said, oh, I did. And he looked at me and I said, oh, I forgot. You can't speak to me this way. I was talking to you this way. And he just looked at me like, what? So I think our natural state, obviously in spirit form, is not words. It's using telepathy. And that, I believe, oh my gosh, there's a hummingbird right outside my window here. I believe that is how we are meant to communicate, and it's a remembrance. It's not a skill or a clair we have to learn. It's a remembrance of that's our natural state. We have just spent years of conditioning, speaking and writing down and visuals. But if you allow yourself and start practicing with yourself and friends to open up to the possibilities of how do you use these other senses, they're there. They're just waiting for you to rediscover them. So I hope this is helpful. And just understand too, this is still a journey for me. I am, things are coming online as I move, and I'm trusting. The biggest thing here is that I'm starting to really trust. Like this morning, I told Richard, something happened this morning, and he looked at me like I was nuts. But I was like, it was more real than anything that has ever happened, because a lot of my things come through internally, so I can't say they haven't been physical. This was a physical sound, like a person right here talking to me. So it felt like so much more three-dimensional than the other ones. And he was like, okay. But I know it was real. And I think too, once we speak it out loud, speak it to your friends, speak it to whoever, it becomes even more solidified because they know you heard them, and you're not trying to explain it away as some fluke that you just think you made up in your mind. And then they know you're listening. And that is how they start working with you, and with that sense. So I hope this is helpful. And I want you guys to know, even though in the groups I'm starting to share lessons, I know I'm going to start sharing them here as well, because I think that it's important for us to really start developing these gifts or these things. And I realized, like I said in the beginning, I assumed that people already knew this, because a lot of the time I come to this feeling like, oh, I'm so new on this path that everyone must be more educated in it than me. And that also comes from human design. I have the well in both my personality and my design, which means that I never feel like I know enough. But in saying that, I think I just took for granted or assumed that everybody is already way more down the journey than me. And so I, like, even in the episode last week that I did about using the sonic slider for your pineal gland, I realized today I don't even think I talked about why we need the pineal gland to be decalcified. Again, because in that moment, I assume people know that. So this is my human self getting in the way, and like having that doubt or that self feeling that I think that, what am I teaching here? Or what am I sharing that you guys don't already know? So please have some lenience on me in that way, and understand that my personality is catching up, and it's trying, and I'm still melding the two of my higher soul and my personality, because the personality is the one, and I'm so grateful for her, that is here and is here to teach. But I get caught up and I don't know who's saying what sometimes. So I hope this is helpful, and I wish you guys the best, and I hope that you take this and run with it. And I also am going to link below a folder, I think it's Dropbox, so that you can download this the sheet that I created that talks about the clairs, so you can use it as a reference, so that also keep tabs of when these messages come through, and just put a mark next to each one as they happen, so that you can start realizing, okay, this one keeps hitting, they keep talking to me this way, and then you start paying more attention. And I think that's the goal here. So I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you guys next week. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe below, and also know that we meet every other Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. The next one is going to be August 20th, and then it's every other Friday from there. And we would love to have you. The link is below to the Zoom, and yeah, I hope to see you there.